Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, The Art and Science of Conflict Management, presented by our Director of Business Solutions at Watermark Learning, Dr. Susan Heidorn. My name is Mariela Salinas, and I will be assisting in moderating our session today. We are in Zoom for today's webinar, and we will be sharing a copy of this recording with you in an email after the webinar. We do encourage participation throughout the webinar, so please use the chat or the Q&A option for our short Q&A after the presentation. Educate 360 is so excited to present this webinar today. So without further ado, I will hand it over to you, Dr. Susan.
Thank you so much. All right, everyone. I was gonna almost say happy Friday. My week has been going so crazy. But I guess I'll say happy Wednesday. We are going to talk about the art of science and of conflict management. It is an art, it is a science, a little bit of both. And so we're just going to give you a flyover, a flyover view. It's a lot in an hour, but hopefully we'll give you a few tips to leave here with. So we're going to talk about what is conflict. We sort of have to understand that before we can decide to help manage it. We're going to understand the myths sometimes that surround conflict. We're going to talk about conflict management styles and which ones you may use most often, and then define effective strategies to deal with conflict. And that's just going to be a high level review. So what is conflict? Well, if you want a formal definition, a conflict exists when two incompatible activities occur. I actually, when I was working on my doctorate degree, Dr. John Conbear said, and which I really liked his definition because it really got me to start thinking about, it's not only when incompatible activities occur, it's conflict occurs when two or more people differ, and to at least one of them, it matters. Why does that definition matter? Because we can have differences of opinion. We do that probably regularly. I'll speak for myself here. And it's okay. You think something, I think something different. Okay, that's fine. We move on. There is never really a conflict. We can agree to disagree, and we both have our own viewpoints, and we're all good. But what happens when it matters to at least one? So if this issue or whatever we were talking about really is important to me, what am I going to do? I'm going to defend my viewpoint and try and get you to kind of buy into the viewpoint. I don't see why you don't understand my viewpoint. And when that happens, oftentimes there is a reaction from the other person who said, well, wait a minute, I am fine with my viewpoint, stay away. And then there's some resistance, and what happens when there's resistance? Kind of our adrenaline starts flowing and we're going like, no, I don't think so. Oftentimes. So and sometimes it's, people can just say, no, my way is right, or maybe it's just, I'm very passionate about my ideas. And so that's when conflict can occur, is when there's a difference of ideas, and it really matters to the other person, to one person of the party or more, that, not everybody's on board. And we're going to talk about that as we kind of move forward in our session today. So there are two types of conflict, and this is really important because I think a lot of us feel like most of it is effective conflict. There's the two conflicts is one is effective. It's directed at the person. Why can't you see things my way? I don't understand why you're seeing it differently. It's more of a relationship conflict, and it becomes more highly emotional conflict because that other person who I'm trying to maybe convince that my viewpoint is the right one starts getting, the adrenaline starts flowing. When the adrenaline starts flowing, people stop listening. And it's that conflict that gets more emotional. It's like, whoa, whoa, wait a minute here, I am just fine with my own ideas. Thank you very much. And that can really, effective conflict, the more emotional side of conflict, can really destroy relationships. And oftentimes, I think we come to seeing conflict or thinking about conflict more from an effective emotional stance that we're attacking someone else versus cognitive conflict. Cognitive conflict is a difference of ideas. It's more of a task conflict. It's like, well, I don't think that's the best solution. What about this? And you're having this wonderful, robust conversation about differing ideas. Maybe I think we should do it this way. You think we should do it this way. And then we can discuss the differences in our opinions about what solution we should do or how we should do it or whatever. And that actually gets to the best result, because more minds oftentimes get a better result anyway. And so I think a lot of times, I know my mother always said, don't argue, don't argue. She was just really conflict averse. It's still drilled into my head over all these years. And I had to realize, wait a minute here, there's really two types. There's the emotional part where we're attacking a person. And then there's the part where we can have conflict, but it's going to be about ideas, and it's not the person, it's just the ideas and getting those out there. So we're going to be talking about that as we move forward and how to deal with it. So we come to the table with lots of thoughts about conflict. Like I said, my mother was very conflict averse. Well, I thought, oh, let's exchange ideas. She goes, stop arguing. I'm going, I'm not arguing. I'm just exchanging ideas. So we do have, we hold some assumptions. That one was an assumption in my head, drilled into me since I was little on. Thank goodness I've moved past and realized, oh, there is cognitive conflict. We're okay. So this is just a really quick exercise. So everybody get to your chat and you can put in the answers here. I'm going to go quite quickly because I only have an hour with you. So true or false, or basically fact or fiction. Conflict always hurts relationships. Is that fiction, or do you think it's a fact? So just throw it in the chat really, really quickly. I'm just going to see. And you can just put, yeah, false, 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 false. Yeah, it doesn't have to be hurt relationships. We can have a very strong relationship and just have an exchange of ideas. You don't always have to get to an agreement. Is that a fact or fiction? So just throw it in the chat. What are your thoughts? Oh, yeah, very good. Team, yeah, it is a fact. You don't have to get it to agreement. Sometimes you're not going to get an agreement. And then you have to be able to figure out, how you're going to deal with that. Conflict is about facts, not emotion. And this should be pretty easy. Yes, indeed. I see a lot of fiction. Yep. Because there are emotions. We can't separate ourselves as much as sometimes we'd want to, but we can't separate ourselves from emotions. They kind of come with us, right? So even when you're having cognitive conflict, you can have some passion around it or some other things. So, it is about fact. You want the data, certainly. That certainly helps you present your thinking, but there are going to be some emotions around that. Conflict goes away if it's ignored. And you probably all have this one correct, I'm sure. Yeah. It would be nice if we can just put our heads in the sand, but you know what? It doesn't go away. And sometimes if we don't deal with conflict, you all know this. I know I'm preaching to the choir. It gets bigger. If nothing else, bigger in your head than what was really there. And so it doesn't go away. Sometimes we just have to deal with it. Some conflicts should be escalated. Fact or fiction? I have a very smart group here today. Yeah. Sometimes and sometimes it's beyond your purview, but beyond your authority. Sometimes if I have a disagreement, a conflict with someone, I have to upstream it. They have the little bit more authority than I do. Some conflict should be avoided. What do you think? Is that a fact or is that a fiction? Yeah, whoops. Too fast on the button here. Fact, yep. And all conflict is bad. You probably already figured this out because I just talked about it. And that, of course, and I also showed you the answer. It is fiction, yes. So just kind of trying to identify what are some assumptions, because if we come to the table with a mentality or a thought process is like all conflict is bad, it's going to hurt the relationship, so I can't get into any conflict. If I just if I just ignore it, it goes away. That doesn't help anything. And so we have to kind of understand ourselves and our feelings about conflict and saying, maybe there's a different way to take a look at it. So the conflict, there's good and bad to conflict. If it's not handled well, in your organization, you have it creates that culture of distrust, or it's like, I'm not going to deal with that person anymore. And where cognitive conflict on the good side can, I would say, generate creativity. On the downside is that it just decreases creativity. It's like, oh, I don't want to work with that person. Morale gets low. There's more stress because it seems like conflict's avoided, not talked about. And I've been a consultant for many, many years, and I've seen a lot of this. And it's just like that us versus them, mentality. It's like somebody's got to win and hope it's us. And it just impedes having people healthy, a healthy mindset, and being able to handle more conflict. Whereas if it's handled well, my gosh, increases productivity and decision making, it gets better results, right? Because we're all collaborating together and getting all those ideas out there. And then, if you combine your idea with my idea with Bill's idea, pretty soon you've really got a really great idea, because we only see what we see. We only see part of the solution oftentimes because of our own experiences and our own education and things like that. So really creates those high-performing teams, if you remember Tugman, and being able to appreciate and respect one another. And I think that comes along with it as well. So why do we avoid conflict when it can be so good? Well, some of us like, what conflict? I don't know. We do that avoidance. What conflict? Or you know what? It's not my business. Yeah, it's you two. I'm just staying out of the way. Not going there. And you've probably heard some of these in your world. I don't want to open that can of worms. Not going there. Oh, gee, I don't know where to start. And sometimes conflict, if it's never been resolved, stays there for a long time. And then you're sitting there going, oh my gosh, this has been going on for years. And legitimately, you might ask yourself, oh my God, where do I start? Maybe you got a new job or something and you're going like, oh my gosh. You don't want to be in the middle of it. It's like, no, not. And during conflict, you really have to get the people at the table that have the conflict, because it is sometimes being in the middle does not help. I don't want people being mad at me. When I first started, I think I was in college in my first jobs. That's kind of my attitude. I don't want anyone to be mad at me. I don't want to get in trouble. So that's one. Or that you just don't know how to deal with conflict. What am I going to do? I don't. So those are some of the things that we tell ourselves, that we really can't deal with conflict when we can all deal with conflict. So instead of seeing, and we've kind of talked about this already, is as a negative event, a mistake, somebody screwed up, um, that it's incompatible with, what I need, or it's an isolated event that really defines our future, or the struggle between right and wrong, good or bad. I mean, that's, a lot of times we see in conflict, it's like, oh, I got to win. It's kind of like a football game. So, and I'm really into football, and I'm out of Minnesota, so I'm a big Vikings fan. So it's like I want my team to win, but it's a game. But you don't want to think about conflict in that way. If you see it as, wow, we have a lot of diverse opinions, we can get the best opinions on the table. It's an opportunity for everyone to have a say and to give their thoughts, and then we get the best of the best, really. It's our strength, it's our diverseness of ideas that create those strong relationships, and it's just saying, we're all going to have differences. It's going to happen. We come from different backgrounds, we come from different experiences, we come from different education, we come from different cultures. There's a ton. And so what if we just, look at it and see, now how do we want to move on? So just kind of changing our viewpoint, going, well, maybe conflict doesn't always have to be bad. So this is kind of a fun little exercise, that this was an aha for me. I went through a number of classes on conflict management and negotiation in graduate school. And they had us do this exercise, and and it just had that pop in your head. You're like, wow, huh? And you didn't even realize what you were doing. So maybe some of you will have that aha moment. I could have had a V8. So think about a conflict you've had in the past, just, any conflict. And if you were either an animal, a fish, or a bird, what would you be? What would you describe yourself in that conflict? Would you be the lion, or would you be the cub, or would and then you're thinking of what the other person was too. Are you the eagle soaring? I don't make good eagle sounds, sorry. Or are you the little bunny rabbit on the bottom, just eating your little grass? So just kind of think about what animal, bird, or fish you are, and then what was your opponent? Were they the hawk that is coming after the little rabbit? Or were you the lion that was coming after, what, I don't know what, the antelope? Oh, someone said the grizzly bear. Yeah, the bird, because I want to flee. So kind of think about and throw it in the chat. I'm just kind of curious, because what it woke to me is that and it depended on the conflict, that sometimes I was picturing myself as, the more predatory person. It's like, I'm gonna get him, I'm gonna win, versus the person who was like, oh, and in some I think conflict, I was the little bunny rabbit. So it's kind of thinking about, how am I coming to this conflict with some of those ideas? Oh, I always feel like the mole versus the hawk, the mama bear. Yeah, the tiger, the grizzly bear. My conflict is a lion, and I'm the bunny trying to avoid it. Yeah. The fish, I want to flee and hide. So sometimes when I've got into conflict, it's like, okay, Susan, what are you thinking? Where are you coming from? Are you trying to be the the lion? Or are you thinking that you're going to be the bunny rabbit? Yeah, fish scuttling away quietly. It's like, I'm just gonna, nobody noticed me. So that was just really an aha for me. It's like, okay, and again, it's different in different situations when you're with different people. Might be the ranking of the people might make a difference too, but it's just kind of thinking about, okay, how do I see them? How do I see myself? And do I need to have a different mindset? So this was just kind of an aha for me, to going, wow, if I come across as a lion, I think I need to pull back a little bit, or if I'm a little bunny rabbit, maybe I need to be a big bunny rabbit. Ah, Yeah, someone said I get quiet, so I feel attacked and left with wounds. I want to revisit the conversation. Yeah, so true. I'm aligned. I'm the budding. Yeah, I mean, it's there's just and just knowing that kind of helps. It's just like I don't need to be the rabbit, or I need to be a big, strong rabbit in order to move. A rock, no action. And you're right, John. Thank you. It can be really a confidence issue, and the more you put yourself realizing it's like, okay, we can have a cognitive, dissonance here versus, attacking either party. So, and this was just kind of what I was talking about already, was a more positive or negative. And again, I think it depends on the situation and where we kind of gravitate towards. The other thing that we need to do before we even get into conflict management is thinking about what do we bring to the conflict. Not only, our mental models, because we talked about that already. It's like, okay, am I the lion who's going to leap, or am I just a little cute little bunny rabbit? We also have other things that we filter our conversations and the conflict through. So, and one is personal values. We all hold values. Generally, we get our values, at least according to research, somewhere between 8 to 12. Most of our values initially come from our family because that's where we're growing up. And then you'd be the family first, and of course, then the neighborhood and the schools and stuff. And so those are the values we have. Now, later, as you get older and move out and go to college or move across country, sometimes your values will change if you examine them and say, hey, these values are probably not as valuable as they were when I was a child, and maybe you want to reevaluate them. We don't always think of our values because they're just part of us. The thing is, it can really get in the way of conflict. So, for example, one of my key values is learning and education. Voila, I'm here. Teaching and creating course material. If they would have paid me to go to school forever, I would probably be there because I love learning, and I love sharing it. I learn through my students, and I hope the students learn a few things from me. So when I come across a problem to be solved, oftentimes with my filter, I'm and not even thinking about it, I'm going to say, you know what, we need some, education, or everybody needs to understand this, or how do we bring this to the table? How do we create a training event, whether it's a new process or whatever? I'm looking at, okay, how do we bring people to the table, and how do we get them on board? Because that's my value, right? But training and education might not be always the best outcome that we need. There could be something else. Yeah, some of them, yeah, ambition, innovation, integrity. Yeah, and integrity is very key. And when somebody goes against my values, like not cheating, I don't know about you, but that's really a no-no in my world. It's like, you're cheating. You can't do that. Even some things that maybe just people. I had a friend of mine had different values. He came from, a different place, different area. And my cheating, he used to get his kids on free on airlines because it's 9 months or less you could get them free. But he was short, and his wife was this petite little thing, and they had these little petite little children. My husband was 6'4", and I'm 5'9", and I had Amazon children, and my son was less than 9 months old, and they thought he was two, I mean, just giant kids. It's like, so I'm sitting there going, you can't do that. You can't get them on there, but I have to pay. You can't get your kids on free and just say that they're under, 2 years or whatever the age bracket was. And he said, why are you getting so excited about this? It's not a big deal. Yes, it is. It's cheating. So that is what I mean. Is like, his values were different than my values. He didn't think that that was, wrong. I have to live with myself. So could I do that? No. But, but, they pop up, especially when you're in conflict, because that's your kind of your go-to values. And it's like, wait a minute here. these are my values, but they might not necessarily be someone else's values. And that alone can create conflict because you have different values, but it can also get in the way of the solution that you want to get to. Also, the expectations. What expectations do we have for that conflict? Are we bringing our expectations going, I'm going to win, or they're going to win and I know I'm not going to be able to do nothing? I mean, what sometimes, those are those, and I kind of think that feeds in the stories we tell ourselves. We tell ourselves that, oh, we're not good at conflict management, or this person is going to do this. I used to have a boss who used to bring me in his office and he said, okay, I'm having this conversation and I'm going to say this, and then they're going to say this, and then I'm going to say this, and then this is what they're going to come back at. So I need to be able to respond to their point. And you know what? It never went that way. Ever, ever. I worked with them for 5 years. It's like, why are you doing this? You are always underestimating where they're at and where they're coming from. So the stories we tell kind of can get in the way, because it's like, well, they're never going to like this idea. Well, maybe they will, but if we say that they're not going to, guess what we're going to hear? That they're not going to. And so so the thing is, are we attributing, things to them that aren't really there? Are we attributing intentions? That, oh, they're not never going to go for this, or they're not, whatever, or this is how they're going to react, or whatever. Those are kind of stories we tell. We don't know unless we talk to them. So kind of just watch out for the things that are running in your head during a conflict and saying, are these really true, or do I think they're true and that's what I'm going to look for? Because we only see what we look for. So it's that baggage we bring that can really make a conversation difficult. So just kind of being aware of oneself is a lot of the stuff that we need. So here's kind of a really quick example, which kind of fun example about the different filters that we're doing. And so this is just a team member saying, hey, can I talk to you about our team meetings? And the manager goes, yeah, sure. It's really been hard for us to contribute ideas. Well, manager goes, well, why is that? And well, because you talk through the whole meeting. So somebody was brave enough to tell their manager that. It's like, well, we need to cut our meetings 30 minutes throughout the organization. So there isn't much time and we don't want to waste people's time in meetings. So we have to cut to the chase. Okay. So what are the people thinking as they're doing this? And obviously this is made up, but a team member might say, but collaborating is how we contribute as a team. If we can't contribute our team, it doesn't add value, but we need time to do that. And the manager going, productivity is the driver how we operate. And the real measure of the team's value is in their productivity. If they're sitting in a meeting and I'm paying them for being a meeting, they're not being productive right then, depending on how you define productivity. So those would be those values. The value of the team member is collaborative. The value of the manager is productivity. And then if you look at expectations, my manager pretends to listen, but you know what? Nothing's going to change. Might be true or not true. Both of these are just one person's perspective. Manager, if I ask for their input, they won't contribute anyway. And so that's his expectation or her expectation. And, is that true or not? Or is that just what we think we want to see? My managers are more concerned about the next move up the ladder than about the team. It's like, yeah, they don't care. Just productivity at the bottom line, And the manager says they won't be happy until they go into longer meetings that aren't productive. Too bad. That's the stories they're telling. And so each is coming to the table with stories. And for us to be effective, it's like, are those stories really correct? I may be seeing that, but what was really their intention behind that? It's really getting an understanding of what's going on. So that kind of is a little bit of a picture. I'm just reading some of the things. Sadly, experienced conflict brings, yeah, it can certainly bring self-doubt. We don't always have a immediate answer, yeah. And sometimes you do have to continue it. Yeah, I wonder if you did analysis for the workplace conflict between women versus women and women versus guys. Only anecdotal. I haven't seen anything really on that it's and women versus guys. It would be interesting. So yeah, I don't have that information. So ultimately, what can we control? Ourselves. What can't we control? Anybody else? We can't control. And when I was in a class myself one time, and the professor said, you know, if you give the basic understanding that people have good intentions, and they said 100% of the time. I haven't got to 100% of the time because I think sometimes people have bad intentions. But I would say 99%, most people, no, we don't want to screw things up. We don't want to make things hard for people. We don't go out there saying, I'm just going to irritate, Susan because I can. Most of the time we're all good intentioned. And if we come to the conflict with good intentions, I think it helps me live with myself, but it also makes sure that I'm not subscribing stories to them that are not there, that, oh, they're just out to get us. Well, are they really, or what is behind that? That is part of that conflict management, understanding what's behind that and not just their actions. So conflict management styles, we're going to go through this really quick. There's also, if any of you are interested on the internet, there's a TKI, Thomas Kilmann instrument that tests for where you're at on this management conflict style. And it's also included in our Navigating Difficult People Situations. But I'm just going to go through it high level because I think it helps, because there is not just one conflict management style. There's actually 5. And so we look here at assertiveness versus task, kind of more of the task piece, the assertiveness versus cooperativeness or relationship. So if it's low on assertiveness, we're not asserting ourselves. And if it's low on relationship, we may just avoid. Because the thing is if you avoid conflict, like I said, it doesn't go away, and sometimes it even grows. So it doesn't even help the relationship, because if it's simmering, it's sitting there simmering in you, it's like then you're just projecting all this icky stuff on the other person that you're having the conflict with. Now, is that to say avoid is incorrect? No, sometimes you do have to avoid. There's always situations in each of these. Doesn't mean you want to do it 100% of the time, but maybe avoid is that, maybe you're not feeling well, or you don't feel up to it at the moment. You still have to address it later because it doesn't go away. Or maybe the other person is getting really highly emotional, and you're just going to say, okay, let's take a break. I mean, there are times where you just need to, get out of the situation if they're getting, a little too crazy, and just avoid it. You still have to probably deal with it at some point, but avoiding might be where you need to be. So that's avoid. Low on relationships, because it really doesn't help the relationship at all, and low on assertiveness. Then if they're high on relationship but low on assertiveness, is accommodate. Whatever you say. Yeah, oh, I love your idea. That's okay. Now that's great for relationship building, but what happens when it gets a little crazy and you accommodate all the time? You're going to feel like you got run over by a Mack truck. I mean, because you just give, and nobody gives back to you. And, accommodate can be great if it's a situation where it's like, it's not that big a deal. We can do it your way. No problem. So if it's not, it doesn't impact you that much, or whatever you're discussing, the solution or whatever the problem, issues, you might want to accommodate. Say, yeah, you're good for it. It doesn't impact me that much. I'm fine with it, kind of like going out to dinner with your spouse. It's like, I really don't care. Yeah, we can go where you want to go. And so then you just might accommodate it. It saves the relationship. and even the work relationship. And thing is, you can't do it too much because eventually you're going to be really feel like you're taken advantage of. So let's go to compete. Compete is very high in assertiveness and low on relationship. My way or the way. Come on, team. This is it. This is the answer. This is where we're going to go. These people always have to win. And it's really hard on relationships because people can get really tired of it. Although sometimes it's a good situation. If your building that you're in is burning down, you're not going to collaborate and say, hey team, what do you think we should do? You're going to get everybody out, right? So if it's something critical and important, somebody sometimes has to make a decision. They're going to you just got to do it, right? But if you're just going to live all your life there, that's, every time you get a conflict and you're just going to compete because you got to win, that's going to be really hard on the relationships. Collaborate is the best. I'm going to talk to compromise before I go to collaborate. Compromise, because I always had heard when growing up, it's best to compromise. Compromises, they go, oh, you win-win. Well, sort of, but you lose too. So it's like, well, we'll meet in the middle. Compromise is great if that's the best you can do. We can meet in the middle. But sometimes it just doesn't work. If somebody wants the window open, I'm going to make a really simple example. If somebody wants the window open, somebody wants it closed, you half open it and you half close it. I mean, if somebody wanted to be out of the draft and the other person wanted fresh air, they both lose because the person's still probably in the draft. And, so compromising isn't always the best. If that's what you can get, go for it. If not, you might have to go to collaborate. Collaborate is saying, okay, let's look at the interest in position. I think I have that next, not quite. Interest in position, which I'm going to get ahead of myself because when you collaborate, you're looking at, let's get together. Let's put everything on the table. Here's what you see. Here's what I see. We're going to collaborate to the best solution so that you all win. And that's collaborate. Collaborate takes time, though. I'm just going to say it takes time. Sometimes you don't have the time. Maybe you do have to compete, or maybe you do just have to compromise. Each has its own pluses. And so oftentimes, though, is we choose a conflict management style because we're skilled at it, because that's just our go-to. Based on experience, it's best if we can determine the situation. So if the building is burning, let's just get everybody out. We're not going to, collaborate on this. But if it's something that's important that we need to develop our relationships with, maybe we have to go to more collaborate. If nothing else, at least compromise. So those are some of the conflict management styles. So kind of think about when you're doing this, when next time you have a conflict, you got to go, which one should I use? Which one makes the most sense? And again, there's a ton of stuff on the internet around it. Again, it's that you can just look under conflict management styles. But, if you do it to the situation, that's really best, because sometimes you do need to avoid. Sometimes you do need to accommodate. But does that warrant the situation, or is it just because you don't want to collaborate or compete? So methods for resolving conflict, we have a structured communication, negotiation, mediation, arbitration, and trial, basically litigation. These are all ways to solve conflict. And I'm going to go through each one really kind of quickly, just a little bit on mediation, arbitration, litigation, because by the time you get there, they're good in their own way, but there's a couple other. Structured communication, negotiation is kind of a little bit better to use sometimes. So structured conversation around this is a framework that was developed to have both parties understand themselves. Okay, and so the first thing, step one, is understanding mental models. Not only understanding your own mental model, what is the baggage I'm bringing to the conflict? What do I need to be able to do? What stories am I telling myself? But you also can see if you understand their mental models, because they may have different ones. And if you may have to ask them during the conversation, but if you can kind of guess what their mental models are, that sometimes helps, knowing that you might be wrong. So that's this first one is, and usually I spend more time on my own saying, what am I bringing to the table that I really don't need? But once I'm aware of it, it doesn't get in my way so much. Advocate. So we want to advocate. And normally, I mean, and you maybe were brought up like this too. It's first you inquire. You always ask questions first, and then you tell your side, because that's the polite way to do that, right? Well, I had found over the years that when I did that, when I said I had a situation and I was maybe uncomfortable with it and I didn't really want to create conflict, but I had to, we had to deal with it. And so then I would, say, oh, well, what did you think about the session? Oh, yeah, I thought it was great. In the meantime, I thought it sucked and they interrupted me, 3 times. And I'm just like, we can't do this anymore. We need to figure out a solution to move on because I don't want to co-present with you anymore. I'm making this up. But so I would inquire. It's like, hey, how did you? Oh, it was great, great. You did a great job. Oh, gosh, that's very exciting. And then I'd go, well, but I didn't think it went that well. You kind of interrupting me. Nobody noticed. I just had to get a few things in there. It's all good. Well, then they didn't take time to listen to my side of the story, right? So through through my journey in life, this one person that I had worked with had a framework. I'm going, you know what? I think I can modify that, and that makes more sense. So rather than inquiring first, and you're going to inquire because you want to appreciate where they're coming from and what their viewpoints are, you advocate for yours. You let people know. It's like, okay, we were supposed to be presenting together, and I was just kind of surprised that you interrupted, because I know I had my piece of the conversation, for the presentation, and then you had your piece, and then you were going to do Q&A at the end. And as I was doing my piece, you kind of kept talking over me, and I thought, people are going to really think that I don't know what I'm talking about, and I felt kind of bad, and I think it just kind of, not only did it not feel good for me, but I think people look like, well, why is Susan here? Why don't we just listen to Bill? And being able to bring that up, it's like, here's the situation, here's the impact, here's what I thought and what I felt. Yeah, he bulldozed you. And so I'd say, I'm going to ask you what you saw, but here's what I saw. Here's what I thought, here's what I felt, here's the impact, and in a neutral stance, you're not accusing anybody of anything, because you don't know what they were thinking. We have no idea what other people are thinking. And so I'm going to advocate saying, oh, here's the situation, neutral as possible. Yeah, you could say maybe I'm a little frustrated, but I'm not seeing things from you. Maybe you saw something different. So then you inquire. It's like, tell me what you saw, because maybe I missed something. You're not condemning them, you're not, pointing fingers, and then discovering what they saw. What did you say? What did you feel? Was somebody doing something that, did you feel like they had questions that I wasn't getting to, or, where did that come from? And maybe go, well, they had some questions. I saw some, confused looks on their face. So I thought it would be really better if I just kind of jumped in. And just being able to talk, it was like, well, because I thought you would jump in. If I was doing it, you would jump. Well, no, I probably wouldn't jump in. Could we have waited until the end? I mean, it's just, an inquiry. And then you take both groups, here's what I've seen, here's what you saw, here's the impact. Now look at similarities and differences in our viewpoints, and then work together to develop a course of action. Because otherwise, if I never advocated for myself, if I inquire first, then I lost the space to advocate for myself. It's like, well, if you thought it was great, I guess, but I'm not going to present with you anymore. And that doesn't feel good either, because maybe you did work good together, but maybe you're both on different thought planes. So your goal is really to get a shared understanding. I know my viewpoint. I do not want to ascribe what you were thinking, so please tell me what you were thinking. Now let's talk about it and see how we want to move forward. So here are some of the things that you might want to take a look at as you're doing this. And here's the advocate questions and inquiry questions. So, you have objective data. Usually objective data helps, because it's not like, well, it's what you do have to, talk about, well, this is kind of what I felt, or I was really surprised you did that. But we also need some actual data. So we start out with the data. Here's what I saw. Here's what I thought. And first I'll go through all the advocate questions, and then interpret, this is what it meant to me. This is what impact. I felt like, people were thinking like, why is Susan there? She doesn't know anything. And, I really enjoy presenting with you. So I'd like to find a way to kind of figure out so we don't do this again. And then I'll ask the other person, well, what did you see? Well, I saw some confused faces. So, was that a surprise? Maybe we didn't, when we worked together on this presentation, maybe we didn't think about everybody's aspects. Maybe we need to work harder on that. What's the most important to you? What would you like to see as an outcome? Because I think we work really good together normally. It just didn't work for me. So how could we honor both of our presentation styles and things? So advocate for what you want, because otherwise it gets kind of forgotten, or it's like, oh, well, I guess I didn't see what I saw, so I'm going to just go away. Well, that doesn't help either. It's because it festers in there. I know, because I've done it. So just, here's what I saw and thought, and, what did you see and how do we want to move together? So that's just kind of a summary thing of it. So again, for this to work, you're not accusing anybody, you're just saying, here's what I saw. So remain neutral, really focus on transparency, get it out there, use an old 60s term, let it all hang out. Dates me, sorry. Avoid sarcasm or accusations. I don't point that you just like, okay, I need to know what you saw. It's not an either or. They probably are both right. We just came from different perspectives. State what you want and then really work to develop a shared understanding and what those next steps are. So that's certainly one way you can manage that conflict. Another thing is negotiation. I'm going to get a drink here a second. So negotiation is a process that gets to an outcome that satisfies the interest of all parties. And negotiation, people always think of negotiation as the destination. It's what I get out of this, right? It's not, it's the journey. And part of the journey is developing relationships. So the destination, I'm not saying isn't important, but it's the process of negotiating that gives you a lot more, and be able to get to a destination that everyone can live with. And just because this is not a negotiation process, but I just, first you do have to prepare for negotiation. You can't just wing it, because whenever you wing it, you're not going to have all the data that you need. So the person with the most data in negotiation is usually at a better place in the negotiation. Instead of anecdotal evidence, get the facts, get the data. And then opening negotiation, it's like, okay, here's where we're here, check the time. Okay, I understand that we have a couple hours. Has that changed at all? Well, yeah, I got a meeting at, in an hour and a half. Can we be done? Well, we can see how far we get, here's what I'd like to accomplish. Here's, the outcome that we're kind of looking for, just you're setting it up, setting those expectations, because again, everybody comes with different expectations. And then you provide each other data, and you ask what they have and where they're looking to do, and you give your point of view, and then it's like, okay, well, let's put all this up on the board or in virtual world or wherever it is, and then generate options. So if this is kind of where we're going, what is the best path to get there? What is the best solution for us to do? And so you're brainstorming lots of ideas. Then you call through those ideas. Hopefully you have some type of schema that you can say, let's rank each one, which one would be the better of them, because sometimes constraints get in the way. It's like, well, this would be ideal, but we can't do that because of X, unless you can figure out how to get over the constraint. And then you make sure that you finalize it and get it in writing. Handshaking might be nice, but the thing about finalizing the agreement, one, of course, it's in writing, but it also makes sure that people don't leave the negotiation process with a lot of assumptions. Meetings, I mean, just even simple meetings, it's just like, okay, you got 3 people in a meeting and you got 3 different people, stories around the meeting because everybody took different things away. And by finalizing the agreement said, okay, let's review this. This is what we found. This is how we're going to proceed. This is, so that there is no missed expectations, so that you don't all leave on a handshake and then all of a sudden you're going like, well, where is this? Well, that's not what we decided. And you don't want to us versus them. There are a couple of things in negotiation I just want to talk about really quickly, because this is a really cool part about negotiation. If you're excited about negotiation, we do have a negotiation class that you can attend. But one is identifying your BATNA. This has saved my negotiation skills to no end. It's the best alternative to negotiate agreement. It's not a bottom line. Not a bottom line. It's not like when you're negotiating a car and I said, no, I'm not paying more than $30,000 for this, but that's your bottom line. It's not a bottom line. It's what if you don't agree that you want what they're offering. It's like, nope, they can't go more than 35, let's say 35,000. Okay, then what do I do? Can I lease a car for different? Can I look for other places for a car? It's what can you do if an agreement is not reached? And so this is kind of something in your back pocket. When I have negotiated different consulting gigs or being an employee and negotiated salary, it's just like, okay, well, if it doesn't work, I have options. If I don't get this gig, I'll find another gig. So what you're doing is you're saying, okay, if we can't reach an agreement on this car, can I take the bus? Can I borrow a car? Can I redo some of my priorities? Do I really need this fancy dancy stereo system in the car? Whatever it is. I mean, you have to prioritize what's meaningful for you. But what if you can't get it for what you want? There's always options. So that's your BATNA. And then the other thing when you negotiate is position versus interest. Position is what you say you want. Interest is what you really want. And I would even say that in using that structured communication approach, you can use this too. It's like, because people say, well, this is what I want, but why do you want it? Why do you, so giving people the reason and asking people what the reasons are behind their position, because the position, like we were talking about the window just happens to be in front of me, said that, okay, open, closed, open, closed, open, closed. Well, nobody is ever going to win. You could argue till the cows come home. It's not going to go anywhere. But if you say, Susan, why do you want the window open? Well, it's really stuffy in here and I need some fresh air and it's way too hot. I'm hot. And then you go, so why do you want it closed? Well, I feel like I'm getting cold. I don't want to be in a draft. It's really too cold. So then you have all kinds of solutions. Open window, closed window isn't going to do it, but it's like all of a sudden it's like, okay, can you give somebody a fan? Can you give somebody a heater? Can you move the person away from the window? All of a sudden our options are like, wow, we have all of these options, to evaluate versus just, you know, the window's closed. Well, because you're really getting down to, okay, why do you need this? And then, you know, you can prioritize yourself, your needs, and it's like, okay, I can give on this, but I really, I got to have this. So when I'm looking for a car, like I said, my husband is 6'4". One of the key things is if he don't fit, it ain't gonna, it's not gonna happen. So let's limit the ones. It has to pull the boat because, you know, he's a fisherman, so it's got to pull the boat, and he's got to be able to see out the windshield. Those are, you know, the two kind of criteria. So if they don't meet that criteria, we don't even want to think about it. So, you know, having those interests and prioritizing them is really key. So that's kind of some tips on negotiation. You know, get all the issues, reconcile the interest under the needs. We make it a we versus you. You know, you people, and I've had to well, as a consultant oftentimes kind of not get in the middle. Let's say I did some interventions because people are you people, you know, you people. It's like no, it's not you people. It's a we thing. So how do we bring it together? You know, how do we create options that everyone can have a win? You know, being soft on the people, really hard on the problem. And then the other things is, which I usually don't get involved at, but there's certainly options. If you have a conflict, you could use mediation, which you have a neutral third party that helps, you know, both parties sit down and discuss and, you know, try and get a mutual agreement, you know, get them to hear one another. It's not binding. Mediation is not binding, so they don't have to listen to you, but you might, you know, in a work situation, maybe you do want a mediator, you know, maybe there needs to be a third party hearing both sides. Sometimes that's not so bad either. And then come together and maybe do some negotiation or some of the other structured communication. Arbitration this is go where you get to a court-appointed neutral party that is binding. They're going to make the decision for you. You guys can come up with it. I'll do it. We usually don't do too much arbitration, at least the lawyers in your organization may, but we usually as conflict managers don't. And litigation, of course, you could go to the courts, but that gets to be really pricey and expensive, and you don't want to haul people to court most of the time. So those are the ones that they are a way to resolve conflict, but not necessarily the most desirable. So, whoops. So we talked about conflict, the myths, the different styles, and some strategies to deal with it. And if you are interested in our classes, we have a negotiation class coming up in March. We have a navigating difficult people conversation, which talked about that structured conversation approach. And we also have facilitation and influencing without authority. So with that said, well, I got 2 minutes left. So hopefully you enjoyed the presentation. Hopefully you got a few tips you can take away. Mariella, I'm going to take it back to you.
Hey, Dr. Heidorn, absolutely. We did got a good amount of feedback in the chat, and we also got a couple of questions. So I think we have time for at least one of them, and then we'll get everyone out of here. But we had a quick question here from Juan. When do you know when you've exhausted your negotiation skills with another party? When do you know you've exhausted?
I would say if you think you can't get anything more, sometimes it's a time, you know, how much time do you want to spend? Because the amount of time uh, goes, you know, the more time you spend on the relationship and the journey, you get a better result. But then there's a point of no return where you're spending too much time and you're not going to get any further. So you kind of have to determine whether the additional time to negotiate is worth it. If you think you can get any more, or they're just going to say, no, not doing this. So that's kind of the art of just saying, hey, you know, do you think we can get any more? Is it going to, you know, having more conversation sometimes is not going to get you anywhere. And then you just have to just say, I think we just need to to move on.
Absolutely. Fantastic advice. Alrighty, well, I will leave it there with that question. And I saw one more about the slides. You will be getting a recording in your email after the webinar. So be on the lookout for that if you missed out on any part of this presentation. And thanks again
Yeah.
for joining us, everyone. Really appreciate your time today.
And
And
just a point I was gonna say,
yeah,
yes, sometimes conflict cannot be resolved, which is true, and then you just have to be okay to walk away. That is very true, so somebody added that to the chat, so I had to add that.
very insightful. No, 100%. Awesome. Thanks for your insight,
Yep.
everyone. And thank you so much, Dr. Hyden, for your time today.
Oh, you're welcome. Have a great rest of your week and happy holidays.
Absolutely, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us. We'll see you all very soon, hopefully in the classroom. Bye for now.